Hi, my name's Julie Casey and I'm an educational psychologist in Torvine, and I have a particular interest in the health and wellbeing area of learning and experience. In this video, I'm going to share some ideas and activities from the SEAL-CYMRU materials. SEAL stands for Social and Emotional Aspects of Learning, and we've supplemented those with the activities provided by other practitioners and from other sources, the internet and so on, and we'll be using all of those in the session today. So the aim of this session is to look at how we can help you to deliver the health and wellbeing AOLE, but also to put into practice the Welsh Government statutory framework for embedding a whole school approach to emotional and mental wellbeing. The activities and suggestions in this session are based on the SEAL themes New Beginnings for primary and A Place to Learn for secondary. And they're designed, as you probably gather from the titles, to be used at the beginning of term. So most schools use these in September time. And really they build on what schools and settings have been doing for a long time at this time of year. So you'll see lots of things that you probably already do and how to build on that. Now, you can download all of the SEAL materials for free, and that's in English or in Welsh medium, and we'll give details at the end of the session on how to do that, so you can have a look at them. Now, according to the Welsh Government statutory framework, the whole school approach seeks to support good emotional and mental well-being by promoting a positive cultural environment in schools, where children and young people form positive relationships with staff and other learners. It's an ethos that values inclusion, where everybody works together, contributing their individual skills and resources to the collective good. And that's what this session is really about. There are two main themes within the topic, and that's creating a safe and fair place, so a safe and fair school setting, classroom and so on, by helping children to understand their rights and responsibilities. And the second theme or thread is developing a sense of community and belonging where everybody can feel value. So all that stuff about respecting difference and so on comes into this. And these are some of the activities that we'll look at or that are within the SEAL materials when you download them. So in a health and wellbeing explicit session, and all of the research does suggest that an explicit curriculum is an essential component of a whole school approach. It's not all of it, but it is an essential component. So we suggest that in an explicit session, you open with a starter, something short and engaging and fun that everybody can join in. And this one's actually adapted from the Year 7 materials, and we adapted it for staff. We used it in a staff meeting and actually had a lot of fun with it and found out all sorts of things about staff that we've worked with for years and not known. So it's really quite a good kind of way of getting to know people, whether they're Year 7 or whether they're adults. And I think that's quite important because it reminds us that health and wellbeing is about everybody. It's not just for the children and young people. It's about us as staff as well. And the whole school approach, of course, is very explicit on that point. So lots of ideas for starters in the SEAL materials, but of course, schools are constantly adding to these kind of activities. So although they're good starting points, we have expanded that collection of starters and so on. And there will be a handout that you can download or access, which actually has links to many, many more of the activities that people have found very, very useful. Yes, just one last thing on starters, really. I mean, it is important. It's not just not just a warm up. It's more, it is important that the outcome is linked to the theme that you're covering. So this one, the theme is about kind of creating that community, getting to know each other, and so this is an activity that links to that. So they're not just kind of any old thing. They're quite well thought through. So, if you're doing this session individually or online, you might like to pause the video and think about what good activities you've used, for the kind of getting to know you, or good starters that you've used, or maybe even ones that you've been on the receiving end of when you've done training courses and so on. The other thing I think to think about at this point is really, what purposes do these activities serve? Okay. Well, there's quite a few of them. Have a think about that. If you're in a group, of course, your facilitator will explain what to do. So I'm going to do just a quick recap on how this topic links to the Welsh context. So, for example, one of the key themes identified in the whole school approach is belonging, which is the most important theme of New Beginnings and Place to Learn, and the importance of safe environments and relationships are stressed in both the Estin report, thematic report Happy and Healthy, and also in the the Welsh Healthy Schools work. So we'll look at the AOLEs in a bit, how it links to the progression steps within the AOLE in a little more detail in a moment. So when you download these booklets, or you may have done so already, have a look at what each theme offers. Okay. In essence, you'll see there are booklets for different ages. So in primary, there's booklets for the foundation phase, and then for year 3 and 4, and another booklet for year 5 and 6. And secondary, year 7, year 8, year 9. What's important, I think, about this explicit curriculum is that the same learning outcomes are covered at different stages. So health and wellbeing learning, it's not enough to cover the theme once and say, oh, we've done anger management in year 2, because of course the way it looks and the way that we learn it changes from when you're in year 2, looks very different in year 6 and very different again in year 9. So we call this, usually we refer to it as the spiral curriculum, and we'll come back to that point as we go through the presentation. Within each booklet, or within each theme, within each SEAL theme, there are different types of activities. Some are whole school and some are more class-based. So for example, if we look at this list on the slide here, there's a whole school assembly and a follow-up assembly, and that's really lovely because the whole school can be invited. It's not just the children, it's the staff, it's the secretary, it's the caretaker, it's TAs, it's everybody that is in there for that kind of launch, if you like, and that's where the key learning outcomes, the key concepts, the themes and so on will be outlined, and those are provided. There's assemblies for each of these for different age ranges. So that's really helpful for whole school. And yeah, I've put parents with parents there. Lots of schools invite parents in for that, but particularly for the follow-up at the end of, once you've been following the theme for a few weeks, it's a good idea to have a follow-up assembly, and parents generally enjoy coming to that because their children are presenting in it. So the second whole school focus is this noticing and rewarding, and I love this. I think this is really important. It's very powerful. You can choose something like making someone feel welcome, and what you have then is that everybody in the school, children, adults, visitors, if you like, parents, are all looking to catch the children demonstrating this particular thing. Lots of schools use their kind of Friday assembly, reward assembly, to kind of read these out and reward children for showing these themes. And what I love about it is that children start, nominating children, and you know, children start nominating staff, and we've even had parents that, kind of send their children in with a little note saying, oh, he made so and so feel really welcome at home. Does he get a point? So, it can really be extraordinarily powerful and spread through the whole school community. A little bit more about that later. Then we have some what are called learning opportunities. They're basically activities, and we'll be looking at some of these in the session, so you can see some of the kind of activities they do there. We know, don't we, as teachers, the importance of the plenary and the reflection and inquiry, the review, and so on. And I think perhaps probably the single most important part, though, is this section at the end, which is about ongoing activities. How do we keep this learning alive? How do we make sure it just doesn't happen in autumn and then not touched again until the next autumn, but we actually keep it going throughout the school year? And there's some lovely, lovely practitioner ideas that we've got to share with you on that. So let's move on to our first topic, creating a safe and fair place. I said I'd look at the progression statements. Now, this relates to progression steps mainly within What Matters Statement 5, which focuses on healthy relationships. And as you can see, there's this kind of idea of the spiral curriculum, the same kind of skill building up as children go through the school. Just give you a moment to have a look at those. You'll see also in the SEAL materials there are learning outcomes which are again build up in that sort of spiral curriculum way that we mentioned. So to begin with, then I'm going to look at a sample activity from the SEAL resources, and this is the class charter. This is an activity that it's suggested is undertaken in every class, and of course builds on, as I say, what we already do generally about setting expectations and so on in that first term. This also is one that goes through to secondary, actually, so you'll see in the Year 7 material there's a very similar activity. And I think it's a really good example of two things about SEAL that seem important to me. Firstly, the development of skills through the spiral curriculum, and you'll see on the next slide how this little activity, this is the foundation stage activity, develops into a much more challenging activity at Year 6, building on what's gone on in between, and it gives us something to hang the learning on. I'm very keen on hanging the learning on previous experiences and things not coming out of the blue. The second thing I just love about SEAL, and this I think exemplifies it, is that, if you look in the resource book, that what they suggest for doing in the kind of handout, if you like, is a really boring little sheet of paper with, our class charter is. What you see in schools when you go in is this fantastic displays that are colourful, that have got photographs that are imaginative and creative and really engage the children. So, I love the way that SEAL gets kind of translated into good primary practice and secondary too, which you'll see with some of the displays that I'm going to show you in this session. So simple idea, but made special really by practitioners in schools and settings. So if you just have a quick read of that, that's the text from the foundation phase activity. Humphrey Hedgehog is a story that they've just read. Okay, so really nice, kind of simple, typically foundation phase example. And then we come on to look at the Year 6 example and the display that they've done within it. So I'm just going to give you a moment to have a look at that, because I think it gives you a sense of how things develop over time. It's an extraordinarily powerful activity, this. We know that if children are involved, they're more likely to engage with and, conform to the sorts of rights and responsibilities that they've identified themselves. And of course, lots of you are already doing stuff on the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, and so on. This is my favourite quote, I think, and you might, for older learners, you might consider what this means or get them to find other ones and so on. But it's a lovely, lovely one to finish with, I think, on that particular activity as a little review. And I quite often quote this one: "The right to swing my fist ends where the other man's nose begins." So again, if you're doing this session individually or online, you can pause the video here and maybe think about how the class charter links to what you already do, perhaps at the beginning of the new school year, or with work that you already do on rights and responsibilities. So you've got a little a link there to the Funky Dragon work, which you're probably familiar with, on children's rights. If you're in a group, of course, your facilitator will let you know what to do. So let's imagine now that you've done a relevant assembly, you've rewarded children across the school for demonstrating the behaviours you've specified of sticking to the class charter, and you've undertaken some explicit learning activities, including starters and the main activities, such as the one we've just looked at. So because we know that learning that isn't reinforced doesn't stick, we have to find ways to keep the learning alive. So these are examples of how what's been agreed in the class charter might be reinforced by everybody throughout the school. It gives us a good level of consistency. So have a quick look at that. Okay. So now we're going to move on to the second thread that runs through this session, and that's the building a sense of community and belonging. I think one of the interesting things in psychology is that it seems that we cannot value ourselves until we've experienced being valued. And that is fundamentally wrapped up in having a sense of belonging. And so this belonging, this focus on belonging and everything to do with health and well-being is really, really important. And it's important for all children and all staff, but it's particularly important for those children who've experienced multiple ACEs or trauma in their lives, because they may not have had that kind of sense of being valued before. And we know that those children have, low self-esteem and so on. So by doing the activities in this session, we can really make a difference to all children, but in particular to those specific children. And this time the topic links to progression steps in the What Matters Statement 2, which is concerned at least partly with empathy, and the What Matters Statement 4, which is concerned with social groups and how they shape us, and vice versa, how we shape social groups by our behaviour too. So have a quick look at those, just to make sure we know how this is linking into the AOLE. Can see at PS5 there in the What Matters Statement 4, interacting pro-socially and actively advocate for others. And this brings us into the realm of prejudice and racism and so on, and working, accepting people's rights and working with them. And again, we see that SEAL, there's a similar progression in learning outcomes. Now, this I love. I'm going to give you a minute just to read that. Have a little look at that. wonderful, isn't it? I think if I was Adrian Bethune, sorry, Adrian, I don't know how to pronounce your name, but if children were writing that in my class, I think I've done a jolly good job of, setting that scene for belonging and creating a community. So perhaps that's our kind of aim. Okay, now we're going to start again with an example of a quick starter that you might use to introduce an explicit session. And you're going to see a short clip, which when you watch it, try and think about what it is that makes these cartoon animals a good group to be in. What is it about that group that you might like to why might you like to be in that particular group? So have a little look and enjoy the film. It's lovely. So I hope you enjoyed that. Again, if you're doing the session individually, then you can pause the video and maybe think first of all about what factors did you feel made those groups good ones to be part of. When I watched that, I thought, oh gosh, they're really looking out for each other. They notice when something is threatening one of them. They're keeping an eye on everybody. They're scanning. They want to help each other. I thought and they know their roles. They all work together seamlessly because they know their roles. The ant's directing with all his different legs, and they're each jumping up and taking turns and all the rest of it. So lots and lots of kind of, really lovely things about being in a good group there. And you might like to just think about, a group where you felt a strong sense of belonging, and what it was, maybe one or two, three reasons for, why that was. And if you have time, maybe comparing that with a group in which you didn't experience that sense of belonging. I've been in a few of those, and it's quite hard to put your finger on why, but try and have a think about that. What was it that was the difference between those two groups? What did people do differently? What was said? How did you feel in both? So have a little go at that. So following on with the same thread, we're going to have a look at some of the skills and activities that schools have covered as part of this topic. And we're going to start with a lovely, again, one of my favourite slides. This was a year 6 artwork activity, and the task the children were given was to show through their picture that we were a community in the class and in the school. And I just thought it was lovely, the ideas that the children came up with, and this was displayed in the entrance hall of the school. And I just think the one, I keep trying to point, the one that really grabs me is that, the year 6 children, they've been sort of practicing joined up writing, and, that one of the children had just done every child's name and joined them all up, which I thought was just wonderful. Really nice cross-curricular stuff. Now, this is an activity we'll look at. Sorry. This is an activity that we'll look at, which is a follow-up to the assembly in primary, and it's called a dream school. So it's undertaken by all classes, each doing it at their own level. And again, it results in this fantastic display in the hall, which, you know, everybody can see and reminds people of the importance of this stuff as they walk through the school. So have a little read of that. And this is from the instructions in the SEAL resources. It's a lovely one, isn't it? One little girl, apparently, I didn't know her, but she stuck her favourite sweet to the leaf that she was going to take from this school to a dream school. I thought that was rather wonderful. Another little activity, this one is from year 5, and it's quite a nice one to try out. You may do something similar in your school, I don't know, but it's the secret friends idea. And basically you can read it, but it's, you know, you put all the names on a strip of paper, put them in a tub, the kids draw out a name, don't tell anybody, and the person whose name they've got, they have to be a secret friend to and do 3 special kind things for them over the week. They keep their name secret, and at the end of the week, children tell the class who they think their secret friend was and why they think this. And it's just a lovely activity. It's another one that's great for staff too. You know, having somebody bring you a cup of coffee when you've been dashing around and haven't had time to make one, you know, can be really, really nice, or just a little note, you know, in your pigeonhole or whatever. So yeah, can do wonders for morale. So that's another lovely one for building that sense of community. Okay, this is another skill, which is being able to join a group, and the resources make a lot of use of interactive stories, and I've just put a couple of examples there. You might like to have a little look at the Rian at nursery one there. You'll find them all in the materials, but I just thought it was a good example of how teachers develop stories, you know, to kind of bring out the key themes. So sweet, isn't it? So obviously it's only the beginning, but you know, there's a lot of these at different levels, and you know, really, really good for joining a group, particularly for boys, I think, who sometimes struggle to kind of relate stuff about them, but in a story, they're happy to kind of say what they think the boy might have done, and so on. Another skill developed as part of this topic is how to make other people feel welcome. And again, this is one of my favorite activities. So in year 2, the children welcome sorry. In Oliver, which many of you will be familiar with, the children welcome the new boy by singing that lovely song, Consider Yourself at Home. And lots of teachers have made use of that for their class, you know, to kind of look at the words and that welcoming message. And then what it says to do in the SEAL book in year 2 is the children's task is to make a poster called something like Welcome to, and then the class name. And the children write or draw their ideas for welcoming somebody new into the classroom. However, you will notice that the picture accompanying this is not of a poster at all. And again, this is another example of how this type of SEAL activity can go to places that you didn't think it might go, and also how children can really take a lead on this. So from that activity, what happened in this particular school, which was a school with very high mobility, so children were coming and going, you know, all throughout the academic year, and they decided that rather than a poster, they'd put a rucksack together that new children could take home, maybe for a week or so or a few days, and really get to know you know, the class through this. So they decided what they'd put in it, and what they put in it was a little photo of each of them, and on the back it had their name and something about them, like I've got a lovely black cat or whatever it was, or I'm good at dancing and so on. So the children could look with their parents or carers at home at the names of the children and develop familiarity. They put little messages in. I don't know if you can read the little messages there, but I think it says something like, "Don't be afraid of us. We're really a lovely group. Come and join us," or something like that. Just really kind messages. They put information about the class, where things were kept, how to ask if you wanted to go to the toilet, and all the things that they thought might be helpful. So it's a really lovely idea, a really lovely example, I think, of how a kind of quite a small little task was developed to suit the context of a particular school. The fourth skill we're going to look at then is this getting to know other people. We mentioned the Pingo game earlier. This activity is taken from the Year 7 materials, and it's called Celebrity. So what this activity asks children to do is to emphasize that everybody is special in their own way, and the children pretend to be journalists, and they come up with 5 questions that a journalist might ask a celebrity, with, you know, some good discussion around what kind of questions get good information and interesting information rather than one word answers. So do some stuff on open and closed questions and so on there. But also, you know, bringing in magazines and interviews with celebrities, and, you know, seeing, basing their work on that. Then they're paired randomly with each other, because one of the important things is that we make sure everybody works with everybody else. Otherwise you start getting cliques and so on developing. So they're paired randomly, they ask the questions, and then they swap roles. Now in this case, you can see that the children wrote up a little bit about their celebrity and what they like doing and so on. But it doesn't have to be that, because in the materials, lots of different ways of giving feedback are covered. So things like, what have we got? 4 groups of 4 all introducing each other and saying something positive about each person, or possibly one pupil from each group telling the groups things that surprised them and so on. So I like this activity because I think it's a really good example of a typical health and wellbeing activity. It's engaging, it's interactive. You don't have to depend on literacy skills to be included. Everybody can be included at their level. So same with Pingo too. That's another nice example. So as well as skills, the activities, particularly in Year 7, Year 6 and 7, aim to develop understanding and knowledge as well, because in themselves, those can be very helpful. One important area of understanding is, why is it that belonging is so important? And we've talked a little bit about the fact it is, but this introduces children to an idea of why that might be so. And some of you will recognise this, Maslow's hierarchy. I often say that it's illegal for 5 or more education professionals to get together without having a slide on Maslow's hierarchy. So you've probably come across it before. If you haven't, it's basically a model that was put together by Maslow, a humanist psychologist in, I don't know, 40s, 50s. And he proposed that there are different levels of need, and until one level of need is met, you won't be your behavior won't be motivated by the next level up. So learning, what he calls self-actualizing, is right at the top there. And before we can learn, we need to have our physical needs met and so on. So nice activity to think about for children to think about how these needs are met at school, and in year 7, perhaps how they're not being met because they've left somewhere that they felt safe and valued and so on, and come to a big new environment and so on. So it kind of gives an opportunity to look at those things. I think also it's oh yes, the what I was saying earlier, if you remember, about we can't value ourselves until we've experienced feeling valued, and feeling valued depends on that sense of belonging. And actually Maslow's hierarchy puts that quite neatly, in that belonging is a lower level need, and until that is fulfilled, it's we can't value ourselves. It's another lovely one to do with staff, by the way, you know, in a staff meeting, how are our needs met, either in our lives overall, or if you're very brave, you know, within school. And, you know, what do we need to do as a result of that to make sure that people's emotional health and well-being needs are met, staff as well as children. This was a follow-up to the Maslow activity in year 7, and children listed ways that they could help everybody feel that they belonged, and they did a wonderful display there with, I think it was 5 ideas, 1 for each finger in the display. The 6th skill we're going to look at is valuing differences, and again we've got a wonderful little video for you to look at here. There's on the handout, you'll find there's lots of different videos around this kind of topic, and a lot of activities in the SEAL booklets, which are very easily complemented by videos like this. And this is a lovely one. What makes us different, what makes us the same, and how children really see that so differently from adults at times. So enjoy the video.
What makes you two different from each other?
I used to not like letters, but now I like letters. I do not like letters at all. Lucy loves tomato sauce, and I do like it, but I don't love it as much as Lucy. Don't have the same. Our Arthur lives down the hill, and I live up the hill. No, I have smaller toes than Artie. Adia likes goulash and chips, and I like sushi. And they're different. He never stops talking. We got different hair. He lives in a house that doesn't have squirrels in the roof. We have squirrels in the roof, so we can't watch television that much because it's biting all the wires. Both. I'm good at gymnastics, and Kaylee May is good at swimming. I'm not good at dancing. I am. You're defender and I'm defender. No, I'm not anymore. I used to be, no, I'm not. No, we're not. What? Good at counting, and I'm good at hiding. And Matthew's good at... better at Tig. And Matthew's good at staying in den.
When it comes to difference, children see things differently.
Do you have anything else to say? No.
CBeebies. Everyone's welcome.
Okay, so we've looked at some of the activities that might support learning in this area, and one of the whole school activities that I mentioned at the beginning was the noticing and celebrating, or noticing and rewarding focus, which goes right across the school. So one school, which I really like this, one school actually switched their reward systems from kind of a focus on general good behaviour to social and emotional capabilities. So every time a child demonstrated one of those skills and they could see it in the classroom, they'd get fill a jar with marbles or warm fuzzies or whatever, get a merit in a secondary context. And in fact, some of it got a little bit out of hand in the school. There were so many nominations over the weeks. This kind of grew and grew really, and the school actually had to use a raffle system. So instead of getting something read out in assembly, they'd get a raffle ticket, and then the raffle would be drawn in the reward assembly. So it's quite a nice way of developing and promoting and scaffolding those pro-social behaviours, rather than just kind of thinking about it in terms of good or less good behaviour. Talked a little bit about ongoing activities. So we've looked at class activities, we've looked at that focus for noticing, and the next couple of slides are about some ways to keep the learning alive, and then we need to keep coming back to that idea that we need to reinforce this learning, otherwise it disappears. So have a little read of this in the next slide. And then, look through. There's a lot more in the SEAL booklets and in the handout, which has got ideas from practitioners and so on. The reference there to lolly sticks, I don't think I finished the sentence. It's just a lovely activity I saw in a secondary school actually, and the teacher had names on the lolly sticks and just chose one person to choose the lolly sticks, usually the kid who found it a bit difficult to focus, and they'd take two out, read them out, and those two children would work together. And it was just, there was no argument, there was, they looked forward to doing it. It was just lovely. So, these things work in a secondary context as well. Okay, some lovely ideas there, I think. The listening service, what a brilliant idea. Bit of training, and you've got we use peer mentors, don't we, and buddies and all those sort of things, but that listening service, how lovely. Okay, so again, sharing, this is really, these aren't necessarily from the SEAL materials, these are practices that have been shared with us, and really simple, lovely ideas. And I just thought we'd take a couple of minutes to have a look at some of those. And, how do we show we value children? Well, we use the language, in some of our classes, there are many, many languages, and using different languages, including British Sign Language, whether or not you have deaf children in your class, to say hello when taking the register, teaching children those skills. Developing SEAL book lists. There's actually a link to this. There's the author who is reading this on YouTube, which is a lovely clip, a lovely activity to share with children. And this is about a boy, a refugee child, and developing empathy through this lovely story. There are book lists on the website, and if you search for books, I mean, of course, these are, let me just see what I've got here. Yeah, the book list for each of the themes that we're looking at both today and in subsequent sessions, there is a list of books organised by age range. Of course, these are a little bit out of date because these were done a while ago. So if you go onto the SEAL community website and search for book lists, you'll actually get updated lists for particular themes like belonging and so on. So just a tip really, but they're great, these little book lists. They're worth their weight in gold. Another little bit of practice that I love, I'll leave you to read that one, but it's just called The Empty Desk, and if you've got space, highly recommend it. Another little easy peasy one to do, just changing your language. So how do we change our language to make sure we're using and building that sense of belonging and fostering inclusivity? So if someone's away, instead of saying, oh, where have you been? We might say, oh, we missed you. Is everything okay? Really simple, doesn't take any more time, but helps children to feel included. Now, here's the big ask. Before we finish, I think it would be really lovely if you were able to share what you're doing in your classroom in any of these areas, you know, the things that we've looked at today, creating the safe and fair environment, helping children understand rights and responsibilities, developing things that you do to develop that sense of community and belonging and show how differences are celebrated and valued. So we're asking you to send us your photos, videos, displays, descriptions. Just write an email, what works in your school, and with your permission, we'll put them and grow this resource for other practitioners and include those in the next session. So this is the end of this session. Don't forget, you can download, I said at the beginning, you can download these booklets, the SEAL booklets for New Beginnings and a Place to Learn on the website there. They're in Welsh medium and English medium. And oh yes, if you are downloading the secondary ones, the Place to Learn, do be aware that there are actually two booklets. One has the activities in it and one has the resources to support those activities. So you will need to download both of them. One's just called resources, I think, and the other one labelled appropriately. So if you use the search bar, there's a search bar where you can just look for a Place to Learn or New Beginnings, or you can go onto the Find SEAL resources, select National Resources, and then select what you want from the options that appear. I hope that's helpful, and I know that you'll have other opportunities to kind of get to know the website and have a look at the resources that are on there. If you do have a couple of minutes, I do think it's worth sharing or thinking about the tasks on the slide, because it will help to consolidate the learning from today, something that you'll use, something that moved you, something that will kind of stick in your mind, and something that maybe you think, no, not for me, that one, I'm not going to be doing that one particularly. But, you know, this is basically an opportunity for you to do a one person or a group plenary if you're doing this in a group with a facilitator. And then when you've had a moment to kind of think about that, we're going to finish by showing you your bonus takeaway for today. And your takeaway today is a bingo card, and which the aim is to spot the components of a lesson that build mental health and emotional well-being. It's also in the pack as a handout, but we thought you might enjoy having a little look at that. And we hope that this session today has perhaps ticked some of the boxes on the bingo card. So I think it just remains for me to say thank you for watching. I hope that you found it useful and that you enjoy trying out some of the activities, because this really is stuff that, you know, we can enjoy so much and children can enjoy so much, as well as developing those all important gateway skills for learning, because health and well-being, those skills of social and emotional competence, are absolutely fundamental to learning, and we mustn't lose sight of that. Okay, thank you very much.